don't know why it went down. And we're back up. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure what happened to my Twitch, but it just crashed. It came back up now. And this Jenner is basically going to finish this guy off. He's got one medium laser. He could leg him if he really just took his time.
Looks like the Jags are going to pull this out just barely.
Yep, that was a good game though. Touch and go there, but it really just comes down to, I'm surprised that they left their mediums up so long.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see two Lord's medium mechs still up, especially a nearly fresh Shock. I was very surprised to see a PPC on it. I'm really not sure what the logic was behind that.
That was definitely a good match. Sorry about the stream problems, guys. I have adjusted and fixed that, hopefully. So, any thoughts on that? I mean, we knew it was going to come down to a brawl, and it was going to probably be close. That's normally what the 540 drops end up being anyway.
Yeah, all those light drops really end up being in a brawl. I was a little bit surprised to see PPCs on the Lord's Shock. I'm not sure if all the Shocks had PPCs, but at least that one did.
Now, was that a normal PPC or ER?
That was a regular PPC.
Yeah, see, I just don't agree with that particular loadout, especially when you know you're going to have that much of a close engagement. You're basically, you're wasting tonnage then. You could bring an ER PPC and at least be viable close up. You will have the extra heat, but
yeah, with that extra, with the 20 on there, I mean, you can afford to make that trade-off a little bit.
Yeah, that was it's a close matchup. I think it's pretty much what most people expected, and the SJR eked this out, so they go to the 3-1-4-4 for the next drop. I would assume we're going to probably see similar mechs. The 3 assaults. You think they're going to bring Highlanders?
Yeah, I would expect both teams to bring Highlanders for the next drop. But I really thought the Jags would have more of an advantage on the light drop. I know we kind of gave Lords a bit of the edge in the heavier decks, but I guess it's going to be a lot closer than I think we thought it would be originally. On that first deck, I was still kind of... We expected the Brawl to come in. I was really surprised at the Lord's ability to come back. It's very, very difficult, especially when you're up, 8-3, to come back from that kind of a disparity in the kills. It seemed like the Jags were able to bring down targets much more quickly. The Lords were spreading out damage, but it seemed like Lords were neutering several of the Jag mechs, making it a little bit more difficult for them to finish up.
Yeah, it's really difficult without having, say, a damage counter for the entire team listing on the side to see exactly where everybody's at. Because the Lord's guys could have been neutering a couple mechs in those, and while it was a mech advantage, they could have been useless on the battlefield, just dead weight.
Yeah,
or
I think
or
that was good.
Or if like you said, they just could have been spreading damage excessively, and then it just took a few of their pilots to start seeing the open components and then finishing them off.
Yeah, and I think this was reflective of this team's styles. The Jags, like I mentioned earlier, are much more, their drop commanders are much more on the ball with calling targets and getting targets down quickly, and I think we saw that early. The Lords are generally more reliant on individual pilot skill, letting their pilots make decisions on the field for themselves. And I think that's what we saw there, was the Lords may have been spreading fire a little bit more than the Jags. I think they were doing more damage overall to the Jags mechs than they were able to put out. So the Jags were bringing targets down faster, but the Lords, I think, were dishing out probably more damage spread out across multiple targets.
Yeah, I didn't catch the damage numbers to see that, but then again, it's hard to reflect the damage numbers in a light drop because there's just not enough tonnage. But I agree, there might have been some spread damage or some other pilots firing on mechs that they shouldn't have been at that time.
Looks like
Honestly,
we've
I
got a
think the
hit for drop
priorities,
2 on Canyon.
the priorities in most light tonnages, you probably should try to get the embers out real quick, and the lighter mechs should probably kill the light mechs. Then put the medians on the mediums. If the mediums get a chance to take a shot at one of those lights going by, you take it. If you don't, then you try to focus on the mediums.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams take that approach, is go for the mediums, especially go for the legs. It did look like both teams were targeting legs. There were a lot of leg mechs, though we did see one of the Jag Jenner that was up towards the end, which is crit CT with really no leg damage at all. So I'm not sure if we could definitively say if legs are being specifically targeted. But usually
I,
that's what you want to do, is start with the biggest stuff, leg it, and then work your way down.
Now, I do find something interesting though, but that 4P was allowed to stay up till basically the end of the match. And that you shouldn't let a 4P. That's too much firepower to sit there and run around for an entire drop on especially such a low tonnage.
Yeah, and those hunchbacks can be
Honestly,
really dangerous.
yeah, SWK tries to see if we see a 4P, either try to hit that hunch and neuter it, or you try to leg it right away, get it out of the way, because that's just too much firepower over the course of a drop. And that may have been the I don't know exactly what pilot was in that 4P, but that may have been the guy that was actually sweeping up and getting those kills. Because if the guy was already open, those 8 to 9 medium lasers popping somebody is a pretty big hit.
Yeah, so looking ahead to this next drop here, we're on Canyon with a 3144. That's 3 assaults, a heavy, 4 mediums, and 4 lights. I'd expect to see pretty much both teams deploying very similar decks here, being primarily the 3 Highlanders of Fracs, the 4 Jenners or Fire Starters, and the 4 Sniper Shocks.
I don't agree with going a full Ember or fire starter deck. I think you'd be better served going with half Jenner, half fire starter, especially if it's the Ember. I think an Ember is primarily a closing mech. It's not an opening mech. But then that also runs into the philosophy and how a team will handle their lights. If they hold them back, then yes, bring all Embers. If you don't hold them back and you want them for skirmishing, you got to bring a few more Jenners. Assaults, I think they might sneak one Highlander, maybe two in there, but I don't know if they'll run all three. They tend to be a little bit clunky since the reworking.
You think we'll see the Victors instead on their part, or the Jags part rather?
I think Lords will run three Victors for sure. The SJR, I think they might run one Highlander, maybe two, but there you'll definitely see a probably a Dragon Slayer and a Cataphract will probably be the heavy for both sides.
Yeah, I'm gonna put. Well, the Jags have been kind of flexible lately. They've been running fracs with 2 PPCs and UAC 5, which is a very fast config. It's a little bit light on the alpha, but it's much quicker. And that mech would best complement the Shocks and the Victors. So they may leave those Highlanders behind. They may go with those Victors.
I think the SGR is going to try to brawl the Lords in this next drop. I think they're going to push it to them. I don't think they're going to try to sit back and snipe. I think that's even a possibility that the Lords may go with maybe a Raven 3L and just increase their sniping capability, but it's just so light of a drop to try to do that. Those Ravens are great from distance, but if you get up on top of them, they're just too easy to take down.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what both teams take here. Both have been known to be. They've been known to take different decks from time to time. You can guess what they're taking in advance pretty frequently, but both teams can change it up, and I think playing against each other, they're going to see probably more deviations from the norm meta than we're used to.
Ooh, I don't know. It's possible. I think the Lords are creatures of habit. I think they go full meta all the time. So I don't know if you'll see a deviation unless it's needed to make up tonnage. Then that's obvious that's something that drop deck dependent.
We did see Shocks with PPCs and a light brawl deck, though. So
Yeah,
who
that's
knows?
something I just don't agree with that. That's a little odd, especially when you know it's a light drop, it's gonna be a brawl. I just don't agree with that bringing that. But again, maybe that could point into the fact that maybe it wasn't a cohesive drop deck, at least from player to player. I think SWK, at least, that we go over what mechs we use and what particular loadouts they may or may not have to ensure that at least it's cohesive across the entire 12 guys.
Yeah, I think the Jags do place a little bit more emphasis on standardization across chassis. I think the Lords are a little bit more liberal in their approach. Though I think for competition, though, they may be a little bit more inclined to be more in sync with each other.
And we have a hit. 4 Jenner Ds, 4 Shadowhawk 2D, Shadowhawk 2Ds, and I didn't see the heavies, but I think they're all Dragon Slayers.
Reactor online.
I don't know.
Sensors online.
Did you VPN it?
No, don't say it.
No.
And we are seeing from the Jags the shot from the TBC and the 20. So they're going to be effective at any range, though I imagine the Jags will try to stand off at first. I don't think
wow, I just lost the stream.
Early.
Hang on a second, guys. I do not know what's wrong with my computer right now.
Looks like we're back live.
Yeah, just haven't got the video up yet. And I'm streaming the wrong stream. Sorry guys, I am new at this.
If we could switch to Himes, I think his is still up. We are, I believe we're still live on ours. Can you still hear us? So I'm just gonna watch the.
Yeah, I got it now.
Here while Terrific fixes.
I got it.
So we're back up.
Sorry guys, again, I'm terrible.
Both teams have just been skirmishing with each other at this point.
Yeah, so we have no down max.
The Jags started a roll right into Charlie 3 across where Theta would be on a conquest map. The Lords are more stationed on the left side, right around Delta 4 and beyond.
So they do have the ravine in front of them, or not too much of it. They do have that big gap in between them. I would figure that each team would continue to roll right.
There.
Yeah, I would figure. Yeah, I think the SJR has pretty much got themselves in the middle of the map, which is a great position because you can go anywhere. And Lords are pretty much, they got that whole 4 or 5 line right there just pretty much solidified.
Yeah, this becomes a situation where I think the Lord's style of gameplay is a little bit, will have an advantage here. See at least one Jag Highlander up in the corner there. If the Jags are stationary, I think that gives the Lords a bit of an advantage. It relies on their individual skill more, when to attack, when to pop, when to not. The Jags are much stronger when they're relying on their team. So I really would hope the Jags would make some sort of a flanking maneuver here, either to the left or to the right. The problem with their deck is that they've got those left-mounted shocks and the right-mounted Highlander, so it's difficult to pick which side you want to attack from.
Yeah, I agree. If you push to the right, you're going to inhibit a couple of the guys from getting
going right now.
Good shots. Well, I think they're actually mirroring what the Lords are doing because they're going to the right. Yeah, you can see them now. Now, this is a bad position for SJR to be going into. They're going into the lower ground, which is never good. And they're going to try to come up the ravine. This is a shooting gallery right now. It's just not a good position for them.
Yeah, they do. It works out a little bit in their favor because there's no strikes. They don't have to worry about bunching up or being on the low ground as much. But the Lords have got a really good fire line up on that ridge. The Jags look like they're starting to push now.
And Proton takes down Gut. That was a Shadowhawk. I believe Proton or Gut was leading that charge. Sirio takes down Rick Rom. And
The
here come
Jags
the
are in a
light
better
mix.
position now as they sneak up. They have the advantage of the ridge to cover them as they're moving. The Lords look like they have sniper shocks. It doesn't look like they have 20s with them. The Jags do, so that gives them an edge here. Looks like the Lord's Fract is a dual PPC Gauze jump sniper.
And Eddie takes down Savage Hero. Eddie most likely in his Ember. Ooh, and boom, 4-1 in favor of the Lords.
Yeah, the Lords have definitely got a better position here. The Jags are in a terrible spot down low there.
Yeah, they just that I think that charge through the ravine that took so much damage on them, and I really think it's the lights are just ripping them apart now.
Yeah, the Lords Lights are playing very aggressive getting on top of them. I think it's 1-7 now in favor of Lords. 1-8.
1-9. They're just picking them apart now. There's just really not much left.
Yeah, the game's over at this point.
No, yeah, definitely.
The Lords are just going to clean up here.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue was that they dropped down to that lower area and tried to charge into, a firing line. They just didn't have the weight to absorb that type of damage before they got up on top of them, and by the time they did, they just picked apart.
Let's take a look at the damage here. Looks like most of the damage and most of the killing came from the Lord's heavy
User
assault
entered your
force.
channel.
Their lights weren't too involved. They were more of a distracting element. But there were a lot of kills taken down by the heavy assault force, which really had just clear lines of fire down the Jags as they were low.
Yeah, I think the firing line that was set up, even when they came up on the opposite side of Theta, they were right there. There was no protection. They didn't ever get out of the line of fire. So I think they would have been better served staying behind Theta maybe, and then issuing a battle from there, because at least then you have that rock in front of you.
And the Lords did bring 3 victors rather than the 3 Highlanders that the Jags brought. Now, I didn't see what their 3D was packing, though. I imagine it was their standard 2PPC UAC 5.
Yeah, I've seen you can use the AC-10. I've seen people use dual AC-5s, but normally that's about what they're running, 2 PPCs. So, not a surprise there. Look, I can't even give you I mean, that was a pretty substantial win, 12-1.
Yeah, that was surprising. I think most of that was just attributed to the tactical error on the Jags' part. If they were going to make that roll right move, I would have expected them to be further back from the Lord's firing line. As they were moving through, they were just really under fire enfilade fire that entire time from the Lord firing line.
Yeah, I think they would have been better served almost staying pat where they were if if the Lords wanted to take their roll to the right and come back around because they wanted to close the distance without going to that lower area. I think this SJR would have been better served waiting for it because they still had basically the Theta rock in between them.
Yeah, the Jags do like to play a little more aggressively, though, and they should have those right-mounted Highlanders, which are going to give them an edge in a rotate right scenario.
Yeah, that was definitely, the Lords rolled right, but honestly, I think they were going to roll right and continue around the corner and come toward Theta. And I think with SJR moving, it almost probably surprised them a little bit because they were just in a perfect position to just beat down on them.
Yeah, rotating to the right there was a great move on the Lord's part. I know that they can outflank them. The way you want to do it very carefully is from that right side and control that valley. That restricts the Jags' movement. Their only option is to either hold Theta, where they do have a bit of cover with those hills, but you're not going to get clear lines of fire. And you can't hold it. You're going to have to pop from one side or the other, which will give the Lord's firing line a very easy shots on any target that would pop up. So really, I think rolling right was the only thing they could do. They just did it too close to the Lord's lines. If they had done it another 300 meters back, closer towards the Lord's drop zones, I think they might have been executed a little better. But even still, rolling right in that situation, you're going to be in either one of two positions, or one of three positions. You're either going to be in the canyon, you're going to be on the ridge between the two canyons, which is very difficult to get a firing line stationed in the direction where the Lords were, or you're going to be on the right side canyon, which gives you a little more room to maneuver, but you're on the low ground again, and the Lords could easily have doubled their line back, just refused the line back in the opposite direction. They would have been under fire line again. It's very difficult to rotate right from that theta position.
Do you think that the SJR noticed that they were rolling right there before they started to make their move, or do you think they just knowingly did it and just basically put themselves out of position?
I think they saw the maneuver. I think the Jags lights spotted it because there were definitely icons popping up indicating they knew they were there. I think they knew they were rolling right and they wanted to counter roll. And I think they just did it. I think the Lords got their firing line set up very quickly. And I'm not sure if the Lords intended to continue rotating. I think they just wanted to be in that spot because they stopped. They stopped rotating. And because rotating right any further is going to put you in a bad spot. You're either going to be down a canyon, or you're going to be on that narrow ridge, or you're going to be in the far canyon. So the Lord's firing line stopped. If it kept going, they would have been screwed. The Jags would have had a great spot on them coming up from that ramp and firing down on them or across the next ridge. But the Lord's firing line stopped. I don't think the Jags expected them to do that. When we've played Jags in the past, we've seen the Jags rotate, but then a lot of the time they'll stop the rotation, and then they'll rotate back. And they didn't do that in this situation.
Well, that was a convincing win by the Lords, well executed on their part. And we are moving on to the 620 deck.
Yeah, we are going to have to switch to Heim's stream for this one. Magician says that their streamer will not be going for drop 3. So looking at a 620 deck, usually it turns into a brawl. You're a bit heavier than the 540. You can bring a lot more mediums this time and less lights. But it is possible to snipe on this deck. A lot of the time, Blackstone, this is where we like to deploy our cicadas and just have a very mobile sniper deck, especially if we can hit a large map. But neither team really uses those cicadas very often. I've seen the Jags do it a few times, but I don't think they'll do it in this case. I think we're going to see another brawl here because the Jags were very successful. Well, they were marginally successful in the first drop in that brawl, but I think they're going to try that again.
Okay, yeah, this one's going to be, it's kind of the medium tonnage, I guess you can call it, but I think, yeah, I think you're going to see both teams go exceptionally heavy, and this is going to turn into a snipe fest, I think. I think they're going to try to snipe it out. As much as I want to say that the Jags would rather brawl it, I think when you start getting into these heavier tonnages, I think the Lords are going to go sniper heavy, heavy as mechs they can probably field, and I think the SJR is probably going to try to counter that with the same amount of tons, amount of weight on the field.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those situations we're just not sure what each team is going to do. This might be a good time for somebody to really change something up and go with something unexpected. I think the Jags are going to have a tough time recovering from that loss. 12-1 is a tough pill to swallow. They are very good at bouncing back from tough losses and coming back strong. But I think they're going to be.
I disagree a little bit, but I think SGR is a lot savvy enough to know that, hey, put it behind them. We still have got, all that happened is they tied up the match, so it's 1-1, so it's a new game, so it's a best of 3. And I think maybe if you put that in perspective, I think if they realize that there was a tactical error made, I think it's easier to put it behind them. It wasn't necessarily a play bad type of thing, but if they made the call and the guys followed it, that's the way it is, and you live or die by the sword. I think this
Yeah, that's a
tonnage
good
actually
point.
makes a point where you can go super heavy or you can go really light, a really fast deck, if you really want to get in there and brawl. And that could be an advantage, especially if the Lords decide to go with a lot of Dragon Slayers or maybe even Highlanders in this drop.
Yeah, that's a good point to make too about the tactical error. If there's a tactical error made by a drop commander, it's just the drop commander who kind of feels shitty about fucking it up. But if the team plays poorly overall, even though if a drop commander executed properly, that affects a lot more people. And I think the Jags certainly have the professionalism to be able to bounce back from a tough loss like that. But then again, a 12-11 loss is really tough to pill to swallow as well. That's one of those drops where if you just gave a little more, you might have pulled it out and not been a drop down. But the Lord certainly bounced back from that one very quickly.
And it looks like we're going to have a hit on Alpine. So, whoa, big map. So definitely if one of the teams brought a speedier composition, they could probably get that hill. It really depends on which side they start on.
Yeah, this is what I was a little bit worried about really with Alpine. There's an imbalance in the drop zones there. One of those spawns is really close to I-9 Hill, and if you control that I-9 Hill, you've got vision across most of the map.
And basically, I mean, if they have some faster mechs already there and they take that hill, it's going to be really tough. It just the spawns on the other side are too far back to get that hill. I mean, the light mechs are the only ones that have a chance to get on that hill. It's really at a disadvantage. So I'm curious to see how this one's going to play out, depending on which side either team goes to, because it's everybody knows charging that hill straight up is really you're walking into a firing line, you know.
Yeah, you've got to approach it very carefully, and control there is going to be interesting. If one team brought a brawler deck, they're going to be in a much better position to take and hold that hill. If you send your light mechs out screening, and if they can hold the enemy light mechs, or if they can even kill one and get control of that hill early, that's going to swing the battle very, very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. You get that first initial kill, you know, hunker down and find a good spot and just let the team come to you. But this map in general is Alpine. I feel that this one needs to be readdressed as far as spawn locations for skirmish and even a couple of the other ones. It's just so that hill is just such an advantage.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the big maps are not balanced properly, because Crimson Tide is the same problem. One of those spawns is much closer to that cleavage area between the hills, and that creates
Yeah, I
a lot
agree.
of tactical problems.
The Crimson Strait, yes, I agree. The low side on without the side of the city, the low side can actually get all three lances up that saddle before the opposite team can get across the water and up there. We've actually done
Yeah,
it in
I don't
comp.
mean to.
It's just terrible. It's just terrible locations, really.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn this into a bash PGI's map makers, but PGI's maps are really based around one kind of central structure that most of the map is based around. We see that at Terra Firma, we see it on Alpine, we see it on Caustic, we see it on so many, and it creates an imbalance in the map, especially because of the limited size. There's really only certain directions you can go, and they're designed like that intentionally. I remember reading an article from PGI about the way the maps were designed, and they designed it to enforce certain areas where engagements were going to happen, or force certain movements of teams between kind of funnel points. And we see a lot of that in Forest Colony, Terra, Caustic, not so much Caustic, Crimson, I mean. So we see a lot of that in the map making. That's a big difference from the MechWarrior 4 maps, which I actually like a lot better, because first of all, they're a lot bigger, and they're a lot more diverse in their terrain. There are certain areas that are better in those maps, of course, but a lot of them are really, the spawn point doesn't matter as much in the MechWarrior 4 maps. We should get some video here in the next minute or two, I think.
Yeah, I was just thinking it should be starting up real quick here. I think Steel Jag might run one extra lighter mech here. I believe so, because since they do have the larger light lance, I think overall, I think they may do that. But if they do that, I would assume their goal is to push and try to turn it into a brawl.
Yeah, they can control that I-9 hill very quickly with a superior light force. Anytime you've got a light force where you've got numbers, you've got the immediate advantage. And really, if you're outnumbered in that situation, you really need to withdraw as quickly as possible. that one extra mech will make a huge difference.
Yeah, it really just comes down to who starts on what side and how aggressive they want to be.
Yeah, it is unfortunate the way the spawns work, although there are ways of dealing with the I-9 hill, particularly the hill just beyond that, back towards the edge of the map, it's like the Hotel 11 area. There's that big kind of plateau that sits behind I-9, and if you can get snipers up there, you can do a lot